And welcome back again to the MatStats Show, episode 37, along with Kevin Hazard and Glenn Gormley. I'm Jason Bryant, and we're going to take a look into things in and around the sport of wrestling as it pertains to statistics. Easy for you to say. I'm the host. I can't even say the word statistics and statistician right. Anyway, with Glenn, our resident statistician, the Sultan of Stat, and the Grand Poobah, it's Kevin Hazard again. Jason Bryant here with you, finishing up part 3 of this 3-part series. The more things change, the more things stay the same. We've looked at the stats across the last NCAA championships in Division I and Division II. We're going to spend a little bit of time on that, summarizing it, and of course talk about the points per minute and margin of victory here in this episode. But before we get to that, we are in mid-October. The leaves are starting to fall here in Minnesota. We finally got some of that F word on the ground. It's called frost. Didn't want to see any of that. While the only thing frosty on Kevin's camera is his face. Where did that grow in?
I just, I was watching Moby Dick, and I liked the beard, so I decided I'm going to get a Captain Ahab hat, and I don't know, I just liked it. My wife doesn't like it very much, but I do. And you have a beard, and I said, I want to be like Jason when I grow up.
You know, you could do a lot worse. You could do significantly better, but you can definitely do a lot worse. Glenn's excuse pre-show was he actually has hair on his head, so he doesn't need any more on his face. So Glenn's rubbing it in, and again, this is by choice. Granted, hereditarily, I may not have a choice eventually, but yeah, this is by choice. And like I said, I'd rather look like a biker than a banker, so that's the way I went with it. So no offense to bankers out there, or bikers I may have offended with that statement, who think I look like you, but yeah, that's what we got.
Welcome to episode 37. We'll get on to wrestling here and not talk about what these three ugly guys look like anymore. Okay, what this show is we've done 2 parts already on a 3-part series on the new takedown rule being a 3-point rule, and we're going to dive into it more deeply on this. One thing I did want to do, as you can see on the next slide, is in today's world of NIL and different things going on and all, I thought I'd just, take a walk down memory lane. One of the big ways William and Mary Wrestling paid the bills all the time was LD Davis glues and adhesive. I always like to say it was the glue that held Tribe Wrestling together. Mr. and Mrs. Davis were very generous for Tripp's 4 years at William and Mary. He was also a Penn Charter guy. I was a high school teammate his too. And they were very generous there. And actually, one hot summer in '79, I actually worked at that glue factory. And let me tell you something, it's a lot easier doing wrestling stats than it is working at a glue company.
I'm gonna try to refrain from making any thoroughbred joke I can right now. And I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna stop right now.
Mine too.
Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to give a shout out and thank them. Okay. Now, guys, on this show here, we have on the next slide 3, in this episode where it's more like a library function where you can see if you're just turning through and wanting to advance to some different parts of the show. It tells you what we do there.
And once again, if you are listening along, we will have the slideshow at NWCA Online and MadTalkOnline.com to follow along. If you're doing anything but driving or operating heavy machinery or mowing your lawn. So again, the slideshow, as with other shows, is part of the show notes on this. So scroll up, hit the show notes, and follow along if you are not watching on the video.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, why do we do this show? The reason we do this show is Mike Moyer of the NWCA reached out to MatStats, and he wants to create a library of statistical analysis. So that's the point of this show. And in our own little way, we're trying to help the sport. If you guys all remember that I feel like a number that we do every show, we'll skip through that real quickly. But of course, we can't skip through quickly 8675309, Danny's Glass in Yorktown, Virginia. And that is their phone number.
We're skipping at this show.
Okay, we're skipping at this show. The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect any opinions of the NWCA, nor do Gormley, Jason, and Kevin always agree with each other. Okay, MatStats is a numbers show. and about finding stats and analyzing them. It starts with facts, not opinions. That makes us different from many of the shows here. Okay. It revolves around stats. We're lucky though that we do have some opinions on this where Jason and Kevin come into this after seeing the statistics and really helps the show go. Now, what we like to start the show with every time is a count of how many collegiate 4-year NCAA and NAIA teams there are. There are now 514 of them as of 10/13/24. Now, Kevin, fill in what you told me about what we said about this when we were talking on the phone the other day.
Well, that's 392 men's teams, and that's pretty much the most teams since basically your era at William and Mary when you were coaching. It's just a phenomenal and it's the NWCA has just done a phenomenal job helping grow it on the D2 and the D3 level. And women's wrestling is a huge component of this. I mean, it's 392 men, but 514 total. That's a huge, huge number of teams.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Kevin, as we can see on slide 11, as of 10/13/24, there were 287 announced teams. That men's NCAA wrestling teams. That is more than at any point since 1988. To put this in perspective, guys, if you're 54 years or younger, there are more teams now than at any time you wrestled in college. How old are you, Jason?
I am 45.
Okay. So in other words, from the time Jason's been in college, okay, there are more teams right now than at any time since Jason's been in college.
I started college in 1997, so it took me a good almost decade to get. Yeah, we're not. I was told there would be no math on a show about stats. This isn't about me. At least I'm not using my high school reunions and counting them backwards in abacuses. So yeah,
yes.
like you guys. Yeah, of course.
Thankfully,
these two gentlemen still go, "Oh, you're young yet," so I'll still hear that from them. So,
yep.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the new takedown rule. Last year, NCAA, they released a statement, and basically it said the members think that it's going to create more action and reward risk-taking. And so now let's just do a quick recap on what we've talked about in the first two shows.
I sure will, Kevin. Takedown points per match. We did this in part 1 and part 2. Takedown points per match went up about 50%. No surprise since the takedowns now were 3 points. But the number of takedowns remained relatively constant. The percentage of all points from takedowns went up over 20%. They are now more than half the scoring. Pins and exposures went way down. Techs went way up in Division I, but remained relatively close in Division II. The number of scoring moves per match remained relatively constant from 23 to 24 in both D1 and D2. Okay.
And we're talking about the AA tournament for D1.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. We are. Okay. What we're going to talk about on today's show is the change in margin of victory at the NCAA men's D1 and T2 from 23 to 24, the points per minute and the scoring moves per minute.
All right, with margin of victory, MOV, and we've talked about that over the last couple of years, but I think it's a good thing to talk about. And what did we learn about margin of victory with these two tournaments?
Okay.
2 years.
Two tournaments, yeah. So what we did here, and you can see on slide 16 coming up here, there's a bunch of data, and I try to then do it with charts. I want to make this clear. In the NCAA Division I, in 23 and 24, Kevin and I could not access the 20 rat tail matches. So all this data is for the 620 matches starting in the round of 32 and the first full round of consies, just so everybody knows that. What we have on this chart is the percentage of all matches and then the cumulative frequency. We have that for the men's D1. I'm not going to read you guys all those numbers. You can check it out. Okay. Then in the next slide, of course, is the margin of victory for the 24 men's D1 championship. Then the next slide, we go Division 3 and 23 and 24. Okay, now, what Kevin, one thing I want to do is when we talk about margin of victory, is set this up here a little bit. Because a lot of people have been asking me, well, you just within one takedown of tying it or going ahead. Okay, the one possession argument that we use in basketball and football all the time doesn't work as well in wrestling, because in order this to be germane, we both have to be on our feet at the time. Okay, I could be losing by 3 and Hazard could be riding the heck out of me, and it doesn't really matter about a takedown because I'm not on my feet. Okay, but we did a little research on that to see just where the matches are in that, since we investigated the margin of victory. With that being said, to sum up that margin of victory with the one possession game, there are more chances now for a buzzer beater takedown. Okay, but let's figure this. The margin of victory we have is the end of the match. Okay, so we don't know where that takedown came in at the end or what. But it does appear that there is more of an opportunity for a buzzer beater takedown, which, let's face it, the March Madness in basketball has been created because of buzzer beater 3-point shots from half court. Okay.
All right. We just looked at four slides of all statistics, and that's you, Gorms. But you need to talk our language. And I know you have. Let's look at the chart you put together to kind of sum up that data.
Okay, thank you for that, Kevin. And I appreciate both you guys bringing me into the world that not everyone's a statistician. Okay, on the slide Jason has up there, in division, this is a cumulative frequency, meaning at the one on the x-axis, that means all matches of 0 MOV and 1. Then 2 means 0, 1, 2. Okay, you can see, okay, the orange line or the top line to the left there is 23. The green one is 24. You can see where there are more close matches at the beginning, and then the green one goes ahead there at the tech range. And then, of course, 23 catches it with the pins, and then they even out at the end. What I did to make this easier then is I also did it, which you can see on slide 24, which is an individual percentage. And I think that's a lot easier to read what is what. So in other words, you can see there's more 2-point matches, 1-point match, 0-point matches on 23. And then you can see in 24 where there's a lot more technicals. You can see again 23 where there's more pins. This is for Division 1. Okay. Then I did the same thing for Division 2. Okay. On the next slide. Okay. And that, of course, does the same thing where it's cumulative frequency, which is tough to read. And then the slide that Jason has up, which is Division 2. The difference there is you don't see the spike in the technicals that we saw in Division 1. Who knows why that's the situation? There could be a lot of different reasons for that. The next two slides do the cumulative, comparing Division 1 and Division 2 over the 2 years. You can see when we get to 2024 on slide 28, they almost totally mirror each other. That's the one interesting thing I found out about the takedown rule change is the more the points change, the more Division 1 and Division 2 get closer together, which is interesting.
Okay, we had that data. So and with the data, if you look at it closely, go back through and look, you'll see there are fewer close matches and fewer pins in 24. So what does that mean? And there were a lot more techs in D1 and 24. Do you think that was something to do with the rule, or maybe even an anomaly just for the year? How does that all work?
Okay, my thoughts on this, Kevin, as I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again on the show, we do have to investigate this for just more than a 1-year time lag. Okay, like next year we'll do 22 and 23 and 24 and 25. I'm not sure why there's less close matches, more techs, and less pins. It's a strange thing here. Jason, you have any thoughts on that?
Not particularly, because the differences between divisions to me, it's in terms of the scoring isn't that great. I mean, I know you're gonna have your super studs that end up, probably being I don't want to say too good, because we've got, each level any given day wrestling, that kind of thing. But sometimes there's a guy that transcends a division, so he might skew that curve, be like, well, he's going to tech his way through, because that may be a D1 championship talent that decided to choose a different option, Division 2 or Division 3, or somebody like that, or somebody that's been on a tear. I mean, you'll get your Marcus Levesser out there in Division 3. You'll get your Joey Davis in Division 2. So those things are bound to happen in the smaller divisions. So what I found is I really think it's the increase in the tech falls was probably the most notable thing across the 3-point thing. It's like, okay. And then when we can go back a couple episodes, the difference between the 7-point outcome and the 8-point outcome one year. And then, this 3-point takedown has made that difference to 7-8 to 7-9 or 7-10. So matches being, it's 10-7 in OT. It's like, what? Oh, you have to double take on that stuff. So nothing really earth shattering in terms of the difference in point outcomes, other than, we know there's more points on the board, but is it really more action? And we discussed that in previous episodes as well.
I'd like to add there, I really think we've only had 1 year with the wrestlers and the coaches, kind of focusing on, they changed the rules, but every time you change a rule, it takes a couple years, and then they kind of game it. It's like when we did the weight loss thing. The first year, everybody jumped up a weight class, and then 5 years in, everybody was figuring out a way to get to where they should be wrestling. I think the same thing is going to happen with this rule. I mean, if you look at it, 50% of the points are now takedowns. So the coaches probably going to spend more time on their feet, right? And I think pins are worth 4, so you get a takedown and a near fall. Now you're up 7. So I think that will kind of start to feather out as they get used to it.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Now let's go to the next part of the show, which is points per minute. Okay, just so you guys know on this, in Division 1, when Kevin and Fipsy put everything together, we didn't see every single point that was scored on a pin. In Division 2, we do have that, whether it's a takedown, reversal, etc. So what we've done here in the men's D1 championships from 23 to 24, there was an increase of 27 points per minute. Okay. In other words, Kevin went through and found out how long every single overtime match was, when the technical fall was completed, when the pin happened. There's a lot of research behind. So that is no surprise once again, because the takedown is now worth 3 points, not 2. Now, when we go to slide 33, what we see here is there was statistically no change in the number of scoring moves per minute at the men's NCAA D1 championships from 23 to 24. So anybody who was at the D3s at 23 and 24 and really thought they saw more action is confused, senile, or both.
But it kind of felt like that when we were there, because I mean, especially the D1. I mean, techs were way up. So more things changed, the more they say the same. We saw more points per minute, but no more points per minute, but no more scoring moves. So really, there really hasn't been that much of an effect on the number of moves. And again, it's going to be interesting to see how the coaches and wrestlers adapt in the upcoming years. Okay. Now, that was the D1 we just looked at. Now we got to look at the D2s. Same, different, or how does that all work?
Okay, Kevin. In the D2s, we have a lot more data points to examine. One of the things, and Kevin pointed this out to me when we were reviewing the analysis I did, we've known in the past that the points per match, okay, went up 1.71 points per match in the D2. But that translates to 619 total more points. So there could be an effect there where people see that. Okay, now in Division Two, once again, what was the different number of scoring moves from 23 to 24 in all 340 matches? The number is 4, guys. Okay, I cannot make that up. 4. Okay. However, as you see in the next slide, okay, there were more minutes of total wrestling in 2024. One of the reasons was there were more defaults in 23 to 24. So the average match length was 13 seconds longer in 24 than it was in 23. And included on that, there were less defaults in 24. So those 4 more scoring moves you saw, if you break that down by the minute, the points per minute went up 13%, as you can see on slide 39. Okay? However, on slide 40, which is the telling slide, the scoring moves per minute went down 4%. Okay? So it's relatively the same again. And it is staggered that there's only 4 more scoring moves the whole tournament. Okay. Then we did the scoring moves and pins per minute. Because, guys, as ironic as this is, a pin is not a match scoring move. You don't get credit for your back points there. So we added up the scoring moves and the pins and both things, and we saw a reduction in 5% of that. Now, Jason has wisely asked me in past shows, is this statistically significant?
Right. That is the key thing we always want to know. Correlation does not equal causation. What does it mean? Statistically significant is that term that the Sultan of Stat over there sitting right above me wants. We want to make sure that is what we're getting to.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. I do not believe this 1-year decrease of such a small percentage is statistically significant enough for alarm. No, I do not. Okay. However, I do believe MatStats needs a follow-up on this after the 2025 D1 and D2 tournaments, because if you lose 5% enough years, that's a troublesome trend.
Okay. That is significant.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Cue the dad joke horn on that one. All right. Continue.
Okay. One thing that both Kevin and Jason brought up in the past is points don't necessarily mean action, or lack of points don't mean lack of action. I'll give you guys 2 great examples. In 2005, the Tide beat the Vols 6-3 on field goal.
Are these great examples, or are these Glenn examples? Because those are not mutually exclusive. Because you can have a great example, but it not involve Tennessee. Can we do that in the future? Okay, and it can continue with your volunteerism of statistics. Okay,
thank you.
You see what I did there?
Yes, you did. So anyway, in 2005, and I would not bring this up if it wasn't pertinent, Alabama beat Tennessee 6-3. In 22, the Vols beat the Tide 52-49. Both games ended, one on a field goal with 13 seconds to go, one on the buzzer. My point is here. Sadly, the 05 game was as exciting and did have as many action points. Okay. The problem was the Vols were only on top of 1 game. What I'm saying is, this is a great example of how one of the best football games ever played was 6-3, and another one was 52-49. So
it's also depending on your perspective. If you're somebody who thinks that a great match means 15-14 versus now we've bemoaned the 3-2 match. We have bemoaned the old 3-2, 108 of riding time match. I hate to use this example, but the Mac Lunas versus Nick Marable match, because that was pretty much their blueprint every time they wrestled. It was going to be 3-2. Somebody was going to have 4 extra seconds of riding time over a minute, and that was going to be the difference. So that's the match that we like. Okay, it might have been a tactically well wrestled match for a purist, but sometimes people want to go to boxing matches. They want to see the knockout. They don't necessarily want to see 12 rounds of strategic, Roberto Duran. They don't necessarily want to see great technique. They want to see Mike Tyson get in there, beat somebody over the head, maybe bite their ear off, and go home happy. That's what you want. Excitement. Excitement doesn't necessarily always match technique. Sloppy, 52-49, 15-14. Is that great? Ed Bannock and was it Bannock and is it Ed Bannock and Mark Schultz, or was it Lou Bannock? One of the Bannocks and Mark Schultz.
It was Ed Bannock. Ed Bannock.
Widely regarded as one of the greatest matches of all time. When you look at that, it's really a sloppy match. I mean, it really is. But because of history adds to that. So again, part of that is the eye of the beholder. And again, eye test. We've talked about that. It's no way you can measure the eye test. I'm looking at that 52-49 to me is going to be probably much more exciting than 6-3 because I want to be entertained. That doesn't necessarily mean I want to good football, watching good wrestling and being entertained, or watching good football and being entertained. They're not the same thing. We need to also remember that too when looking at these statistics.
Yeah, I agree, Jason. And on the next slide, I won't bring up the teams, but sometimes a goal line stand is the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Or a fumble in case you're a 90s, late 80s, early 90s John Elway Denver Broncos fan and you just want to bemoan Ernest Biner and the Cleveland Browns. We can throw that drive out there too. That was a goal line stand of a different sort.
Yep.
Gable and Owings was a great match. It was exciting because it was Dan Gable. It was his last match. But if you watch it, it was a really, like you were just saying, Jason, it was sloppy. It was really a sloppy match. I mean, I had to go back through a couple times just to kind of figure out the score. It was kind of a wild match.
I wasn't born yet, so I have no recollection of watching it other than the clips that we have now. It's the full match, but it's there's it's not the as long as it actually took. Obviously, it's the edited for TV version. But and I'm not saying that as a joke. It's the literal edited for TV version. That's what we've got. So
yeah, and it's one of these things like we saw that the NCAA Rules Committee tried to do it to encourage scoring and action, but scoring and action are not positively one correlated by any means. Okay. I'll do my best here.
Again, more things change, the more they stay the same. D2's new takedown did not have any effect on creating more scoring moves, but doesn't mean there was less action and excitement. And like we learned looking at the Vols examples, in all sports, there's plenty of action. It doesn't necessarily result in points. And 2 goal line stands at Neyland Stadium, great example of this.
All right, I'm going to do my best here for everyone to sum up the takedown point change from 23 to 24 and what it all means to us. Okay. We saw more points, but no real change in the number of takedowns. We saw a small decrease in the number of scoring moves per minute in D2. Not enough to panic, but requires fire up. In D1, it was about constant, the scoring moves per minute. We saw fewer close matches and less pins, but more techs. We do see the possibility of more buzzer-beating takedowns, which, heck, that might help the sport enthusiasm. Okay. Personally, I'm all for this rule change to see what happens. I have no problem with it whatsoever, but it needs to be monitored over the years by MatStats because some things can happen. You lose 5% a year, nobody notices it, and then you wake up one day and find out there's no action. Okay. Scoring and action are not positively one correlated. You can't even measure how correlated they are because scoring is a definitive number. Action is a subjective term. Okay. We are we're in a situation here where I'm supporting what the Rules Committee did in their effort, but it is really tough to legislate action because the point of the whole thing is to win the darn match. And it really doesn't matter if you win 1-0 or 15-14, you advance. And the most
Now,
good.
Glenn, one thing I want to bring up here too is we're going to have a whole nother data set to work with moving forward on this because this is entering high school this coming year. The NFHS, the National Federation of High School State Associations, have adopted the 3-point takedown. We saw the Super 32 this past weekend have the 3-point takedown. You know, who's number one with Floresta did the 3-point takedown. I think they did it the year before. I think they did it with college rules for a while. But we're going to have data sets now across the 50 wrestling states plus DC that are doing high school wrestling. Yes, I say 50 because Mississippi's got it. So that's something that we can also look at too. Now, what are the differences going to be on the high school level to the college level? That will be a massive thing. Well, we'll just have Kevin just spend his time there on the beach doing high school stats for the next year. So we can do that.
Yes.
I got a question here. It you know, it's like you're saying, you're talking about action. Should they be looking at stalling?
Well, we're going to do a show on stalling
I mean,
soon.
if you really reinforce, they never, you know, the stalling is very seldom called. And if they really change the criteria on stalling, do you think it would help or not help? Or is that just, I mean, that's now we're into opinion, but I'm wondering if that would not be a good thing.
Well, Kevin, you know me, I don't like to voice an opinion until I have some statistics to back it up. And I don't have any on the stalling, but we will do a show on stalling.
All right. So what did we learn?
What did we learn?
As of 10/13, there are now 514 four-year collegiate wrestling teams. That's NCAA and NAIA men and women, and 287 men's NCAA teams. The last time we had this many men's NCAA teams was 1988. Now, for me, that's 20 years from my college days, but still, it's a long time. It's just been the NWCA and Mike Moore have just done a great job getting it out to the schools. Takedown points went up about 50% from 2023 to 2024, and 50% of all scoring. D1 had a lot more tech falls, but D2 did not see the same spike. Is this just your 1 year anomaly? We'll find out in the upcoming years. Margin of victory was almost identical in 2024 between D1 and D2. D1 saw an increase of 27% points per minute from 23 to 24, but statistically, no increase in scoring moves. There was actually a slight decrease in scoring moves in D2 from 23 to 24, but there were over 600 more match points scored. And that can give you a perception of more action. More scoring, same overall number of scoring moves, D2 championships. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And MatStats is happy to share our work and analysis with the Rules Committee to help our sport better.
Yeah, show your work. We're glad
to
do
do
that.
I'm willing to show my work. And yeah. So, Kevin, thanks for that synopsis of everything. Just so everybody knows, the next show, and we have talked somewhat about high school, and this thing is high school participation numbers. Okay. At the request of the heads of state of the NWCA, that's what we're going to do in the next show. And Jason and Kevin, do you have anything to say to wrap it up?
I do, and this is one I'm looking forward to as far as the high school participation stats. And I'm gonna kind of throw a little tease out there. What I'm interested in analyzing, I'm also going to look at this from what are some of the answers. We get these questions about those participation spikes, particularly in the 70s, and then it's dropped this many. I want to also include and look at the competitive aspect of what else have our kids. And I went through these things when I was, in the 90s. Okay, then now we're talking like 27 years ago. I graduated high school. Well, where are those rates? Like the number of sports being offered in the high point in our heyday that is being looked at. Oh, in the 70s we had this. How many sports did we have that were competing for our kids? We have more sports opportunities. We have so many more specialized sports opportunities. Travel basketball. My neighbors, I don't know how many times between their three boys they've been in gyms across their summers the entire time. We got all, Fargo and all the dual meet wrestling tournaments on the wrestling side, the AAU circuit, the USA circuit, the New Age stuff, the Wildcat events, the youth stuff, roller. We got all that stuff. Hockey, geez, just look at the rinks that are full all year round here in Minnesota. I mean, you go into summertime and there's a hotel filled with kids because they're at a hockey tournament in July. So the competitiveness for the kids' opportunities at the high school level is also greater than it's ever been. So that's something to keep in mind when we go into next month's episode. And that's something I'm really probably the most interested in looking at is what else are our kids playing?
Interesting.
That's a great point. I wrote that down to pull that data and analyze it for you, Jason, for the next show.
I can do that.
Something I would be interested in. I was at the Last Chance Olympic qualifier, and there were a significant number of high school kids there competing on a high level. And two or three in the finals. One actually won it, beat two NCAA champs, Jacks. And I'm interested. I mean, when I was a kid, we wouldn't even think going to a college thing. Now they compete at the college. I mean, Kerry Colott, when you were coming through, he would go to the Midlands and place. But he was an anomaly. I think there's a lot more high school kids competing on the college level now.
Yeah, I saw a tweet the other day. Adam Tirapelli said he's one that's been pretty vocal about this. Is like the gap between the elite high school wrestler and the college wrestler is he said is as narrow as it's ever been. I think that's going to be a hard one to statistically break out because we're dealing with a bunch of high school unicorns essentially. And they're just did they exist back in the day? We don't know because they didn't have as many opportunities to compete. Again, we're talking about the competitiveness now, the ability. And the access. I mean, I remember at when your son Brian and I worked the simulation camp at Spooky Nook. Bo Bassett is out there. He's getting to work out with the freaking Olympic team, and this is he walked up and said hi. Says, take this in, man, soak this up because this is opportunities that people don't. And now kids got Sam Herring's out there too, so you got opportunities for kids to have access to these athletes like never before. And that definitely plays a role in, the more kids that have that access, the more you can put that dream as being attainable. You can get hands on somebody, be like, wow, I can be here. I can go there. I have this dream versus of reading in a magazine and putting up a poster or a cutout of Dan Gable on your wall or something like that. So the opportunity that our generation's kids, like I'm saying, my kids are now, I've got a 12-year-old. So the kids that are coming through being able to watch all that stuff on YouTube. And then here they are, say 4 years later, they'll be 16, be like, I'm at the Olympic Training Center, and there's Kyle Dake over there, there's Jordan Burroughs over there, there's Jaden Cox, there's Kyle Snyder, there's Adeline Gray, Helen Maroulis. I mean, let's not leave the girls out by any stretch, but the opportunities for that gap to be closed. I mean, the access there, the ability to see that stuff with their own eyes, there really isn't a measurable statistic you can put on that value right there. So. That's my position there.
All right, well, great, guys. Thanks for wrapping the show up. And for my co-host, Jason Bryant, Kevin Hazard, I'm Glenn Gormley. See you guys next month.